Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am blessed and honored to be here today with two fabulous global immigration attorneys from Erickson Immigration Group. And we're going to bring them forward here in a moment. But first, I'm going to talk to you as I always do. And we're going to talk about our book club book of the month for the month of July. The book we are reading is Fear is My Homeboy. So I encourage everybody to go out, check it out. You can get it on Audible. You can buy the book. Judy Holler is the author. You can holler at Judy, hello@judyholler.com. You can also get it from your independent bookstores. You can call our friend Janet Webster Jones at Source Booksellers in Detroit. You can get it from her. And it's really about how to slay doubt, boss up, and succeed on your own terms, which I think is applicable for everyone. So thank you so much, Janet, for rolling that. And I look forward to reading this book. Thank you to Francine Drusty for suggesting Judy, who is a fabulous speaker. She will be on the program to talk about the book. And today we are talking about immigration. Immigration is a truly hot topic right now. And it's hot in the U.S. It's hot all over the world. And so we have two of the smartest people I know in immigration. And we're going to bring them out now. Let's go ahead and welcome Salman Cheema and Zara Najam to the show. How are y'all doing today?
Good. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Good to hear, Ben. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Now, where in the world are you sitting right now? Salman, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I'm in our flagship office in the Washington, D.C. area, just outside of D.C. in Arlington, Virginia.
Okay, wonderful. And now, do you work in that office with Justin?
I do. Yep. He's our managing director on my team.
Okay, excellent. All right, cool. Yeah, Justin's been on the show before. And Zara, no strangers to the show either. Zara, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm here in sunny Los Angeles, and we can't complain. So everything's good. Glad to be back.
Wonderful. Well, I've heard this is the best way to spend an afternoon. Friday afternoon is with us today. So we're not going to challenge that notion. We're going to embrace it, lean in, and learn about immigration. So if you're watching right now, we got a dozen people on LinkedIn watching us live. We got half a dozen people on Facebook. If you're watching right now, please go ahead and let's give Salman and Zara a hand clap, a little virtual hand clap, a little green. Hit that little green applause icon there. We got folks checking in. Let's see who's watching us here. We've got Jamie Massler checking in. Hi, Ben, Salman, and Zara. Cheers from very sunny Mississippi.
Oh.
What's up, Jamie? There we go. Simon Johns, happy Friday from the UK. Hey, Simon, good to see you.
Friday night for Simon. I love it. We're going global here.
Usually the Brits are about 3 pints in when we roll at 4 o'clock. And so they get a little surly in the comments sometimes. So Simon, don't disappoint me. Drew Phillips, happy Friday, Love and Relo fam. What up, Drew? Drew's on the West Coast there. He's out in Cali. I think he's in NorCal, though. I think he's in the Bay.
Yeah.
David Croft, hello, Zara.
Great. So glad you joined us. Good to hear from you.
Do we know David?
Of course we know David. Who doesn't know David?
Sorry. I don't know, David. It's nice to meet you, David. Welcome.
You can get to know him.
Who is David? Tell us who David is. We got a moment.
David is from White Cart Mobility, and I believe he is in customer business development for White Cart. And he's been with them for a long time. He's been around the global mobility industry, and he's very involved with BAM, for short, the Bay Area, which is where we met. So, and he's originally Canadian, I believe. So, yay!
Wow, there you go. First-hand immigration client. Love it. Simon Johns, gin and tonic. Ben, I was corrected. It is a G&T Friday. Fantastic. Francine Drusty checking in. Happy Friday from St. Louis. What's up, Francine? David Murray, good evening from London. Another Londoner here.
A lot of UK folks.
Dan checking in. Hi, Zara, Salman, and Ben. Hello from rainy Detroit. Hey, Dan, how was that margarita mix? Let me know. Hit me in the comments. I got the best margarita mix. Okay, I know we're going to get into some important stuff. I know you guys are lawyers, very serious people. You bill by the hour, but just give me a moment on this, okay?
We're just faking it most of the time, Ben.
Thank you. Somebody at least admits it, okay? I get a bill sometimes, okay? And I'm like, are these guys for real? No, but it's Tres Agaves. Tres Agaves organic margarita mix, phenomenal. Puts all of the margarita mixes to shame. Dan, let me know how it tastes. Casey Gale. Hello, Casey from San Diego. Fantastic. All right, everybody. If you're watching, go ahead, hit that like button. We're going to get into global immigration. First, let us know. What does a global immigration attorney actually do for a corporation, for an employee? Just set the table for us real quick.
Yeah, besides act important? That's a good question. The reason it's a good question is because I think our area of law is still niche and it's still developing, and not a lot of US immigration firms have a global section. So this is a very good start. So essentially what Salman and I do as global US attorneys is we manage all non-US immigration related matters for our clients. So we coordinate between our corporate clients and the local counsel on the ground in the destination country to secure work permits and visas for business travelers, for new hires, for transfers. And it's really helpful because our clients are really looking for a central contact point to go to find out about immigration, whether it's in the UK, Australia, Canada, instead of having to do that all in-house and figure out the nuances of the immigration system in each country themselves. They can go to Salman and I, and we can guide them efficiently and with credible sources that we already have established in the ground for each country. And so they can make sure that the immigration process is streamlined for their employees. And I think it's extremely important because making the move from one country to another is such an anxiety-ridden process altogether. So it's extremely important that employee experience is accounted for. And so having someone like us who, we've done this for multiple countries, multiple years, guide you through that, I think that really puts the client at ease.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, right? So you're saying, centralize it because we can ensure a uniform employee experience, despite the fact that all the immigration laws might be different from country to country. That makes a lot of sense. Is that the way most companies do it today? Is it centralized where they say, we're just going to use Erickson or one of the other big firms? Or is it each country and business unit kind of has their own relationship? What would you say the predominant method is today?
Yeah, Ben, I would say it really depends on where a company is in its growth cycle. The larger, more developed companies are moving towards a little bit more centralized process. They're finding that having a far-flung HR in 20 or 30 different countries, if you leave them to their own devices, negative things might happen and they can come back and impact you at your US headquarters. So we always talk about immigration in terms of taking things off the plate of the mobility team that's in the U.S. So we don't want you to have to worry about, and how M&A is going to impact your, global immigration, foreign national sponsored population. We take that information that, you might be going to a local partner, we digest it and we give it back to you without a lot of legalese in a language that you understand here. And we're also in your time zone here in the U.S. So, we work with our partner attorneys, and then we can come back and kind of give you the lay of the land and in a very easy to understand format. But, we do also work with companies that have decentralized their global immigration work, and they just put us directly in touch with the HR in other countries. But like I said, I think it just depends on how sophisticated the company is and how much control the head office wants to have over the entire population.
Now, I have another question because here I am. I'm a lay person. I'm not a lawyer, although the guy at the gas station asked if I was a lawyer one time because I was wearing a suit for no reason at all. And yeah, no, I was like, no, I'm actually a mover. And he didn't understand what I was talking. Like, what do you mean a mover? Anyway, he looked disappointed in me, to be honest with you. I thought he was like, are you my uncle? Like, I don't understand where you're coming off right now. He was very disappointed at my life decisions. But anyway, I'm not a lawyer. So help me understand what the difference is between an immigration attorney, an immigration firm, and a global immigration attorney. What is the difference, or what are some of the common misconceptions?
So, I guess if you say immigration attorney, especially in the US, that typically means U.S. immigration only, right?
Meaning that people are coming and going from the United States.
Exactly, inbound to the U.S., not outbound. So just inbound to the U.S. What are the laws of the U.S. immigration, right? Whereas global, what we do is we talk about the inbound laws for other countries, inbound immigration laws for other countries. So how can you get your employee, if they can't, for example, stay in the U.S., how do you get them into Canada? That's when we come in. Or how do you, if you need to get them into the UK, what are the laws UK? What work permits do they qualify for? You know, and I know we see that, Salman, I know we see that a lot with our clients. They're, especially with H1B, or those who are hoping to get selected in the H1B lottery and then they don't get selected. Well, our clients want to know, where else can we put them? Where else in the world can we send them so we can retain that talent and not have to lose them just because they can't stay in the country? So that's where I think we really come in and provide those solutions to other countries.
I would say, Ben, that our goal really as global attorneys is to create and craft an immigration strategy for our clients in order to retain and hire really elite talent. As you know, immigration is kind of become like a benefit for a lot of employees, a lot of companies. An elite software engineer, for example, is going to be asking the company, well, where are you going to put me? Because I want to move. I want to be somewhere else. And companies are responsive. And so that's really where we come into it. Like Zara mentioned, you know, H1B last shots. When you're in the US, you have 3 years on a postgraduate OPT. And at the end of that, if you weren't picked in the lottery and you were very unfortunate 3 years in a row, large multinational companies are going to be looking to find a place to send you. And that's really where we come in. We work with our US attorneys on our teams to kind of figure out, where can we send this person based on their skill set? Where's their head count in the foreign offices abroad? And where does it make sense in terms of a timing perspective? And that's really what we're seeing right now, majorly impacted by COVID, is making that timeline work for somebody whose US status is about to expire before they can actually start working in another country without a gap in work authorization there.
So this is interesting because people hit me up on LinkedIn, right? And they're like, hey, I'm over in this country and I do X and I really want to get to the United States. You know anybody that's hiring over here and will sponsor me? And I'm like, no, I don't. I know nothing about what you're talking about. I'm very sorry and I wish you the best. But this, to your point earlier about this is a talent, this is a real benefit for talent. You know, I get that. That makes a lot of sense. Sidebar here. Do you have to be licensed to practice law in every country that you immigrate people to?
That's a good question, right, Salman?
Yeah, so the answer is no. I mean, Zara and I are both licensed here in the United States.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, you didn't vet us before we came on, Ben.
I have no standards. I just luck out every day. Okay.
Right. So we work with, you know, attorneys that are licensed in other countries, or in some countries, the attorneys don't handle immigration. So we kind of vet their backgrounds and make sure that if they're relocation providers, you know, are they good at what they do? And then, but at the end of the day, we have an attorney-client, you know, relationship that we're beholden to here in the United States. So our clients are comfortable knowing that even if something goes wrong abroad, we're still responsible here. So we manage that relationship, but we work with attorneys who are licensed to handle this abroad.
And then something else you said really stuck out to me, which is if they're out of shots, if they're out of lottery shots here in the US, they're going to start looking at what other countries can you put me in. And I think it's a very interesting misconception here in the United States that if we clamp down on immigration, right, that these American jobs might be preserved somehow. And the reality, and go to another American worker who's qualified, who's just been hiding from us this whole time, you know, and just going to pop out of the bushes and say, ha, here I am, give me the job. But the truth is, we're more likely, or you could tell me, actually, I don't want to tell you, you tell me. But is it more likely that we find a candidate here in the U.S., that the company finds a candidate here in the U.S., or that the company sends that job somewhere else to be done?
Well, I think it really depends. So especially with engineering and IT related positions, there's shortage of skill and talent to meet those needs in a majority of the countries in the world, right? And so it is more likely that the companies are going to take that talent from the US if they can't keep it here and find a way to keep them in another country. Right. And so that's something that we're seeing. And of course, other countries are going to welcome them because that's the kind of talent that they need as well. Right. Even in a time of economic downturn where most countries are looking to protect their own citizens, right, in one way or the other, much like the US is, they're still going to welcome wherever any foreign talent that fills that skills gap in their local market. So we're going to continue to see that those types of jobs or those types of foreign nationals, it's going to be easier to obtain work permits for them, even abroad, if you can't keep them in the US. So then I think it's a good question. I think it just depends on the role and then also what country we're looking at as well.
We actually had a question. Elena took this question right out of my brain and wrote it down. And she says, with the U.S. having limited immigration options, which countries tend to be the destinations of choice for elite talent? Or as I say, who's our competition out there for all this great talent?
Absolutely. And I would say our number one competitor right now internationally is definitely Canada. Canada, we field questions every day from all of our clients from US-based attorneys who are just tired of waiting 20 years for a green card. And they ask us, well, what do I have to do to get to Canada? Because Canada has made things very easy. Relatively compared to the United States. So you can get a work permit and get there in 4 to 6 weeks. Now, we'll talk about how COVID is impacting that a little bit later in the show, but in normal times, you can get to Canada in 4 to 6 weeks. You can also apply for permanent residence without even having an employer sponsor you. And as long as you meet the threshold, in a score system, you can get permanent residence pretty quickly, within 6 to 8 months, no matter where you're from. So Canada has become extremely welcoming, especially to technology employees, software engineers. So we're definitely in an arms race, and we can tell you just firsthand experience that we are losing some really great employees. I mean, I have.
Give me an example, please.
I'll give you an example, Ben. There's a guy who works for one of our major clients who has double degrees from Harvard. He was in the H1B lottery 3 years in a row, didn't get picked, wound up getting offshored by the company to Canada. He went there. After a year, the plan was to bring him back on an L1 visa. Now we get this executive order from President Trump, and he can't come in. So rather than say, okay, I'll wait till 2021 and see what happens, he said, you know what? I love it here. I'm in Toronto. It's great. I want permanent residence. I'm going to stay. And now we're losing a really talented software engineer who loved it here, had been here for 7 or 8 years, going back to when he came to college. And now he's a Canadian employee on the path to Canadian citizenship and probably won't come. So we're lucky in the sense that a U.S. company was able to hang on to him, but we're unlucky in that he's not going to be working here in the U.S. and the government's not going to be getting that income tax that he's making a ton of money. So
I was going to say, I bet he's a highly compensated individual.
Yeah,
wow.
To say the least. Absolutely. So that's an example that
all his family, all his kids, all his kids' kids are going to grow up in Canada, and all their double degrees from Harvard or wherever they decide to go to college up there. I mean, it just has such a, I mean, that's the other thing too. Like, don't you see like potentially like a generational kind of effect from some of this as well, like down the road 20, 30 years from now, when these people start having children and start building families and start building businesses there as well, like, because he might be an employee today, but tomorrow he might be an entrepreneur. He might start a business, and now he's starting a business and hiring people in Toronto instead of hiring people in Boston or wherever. Zara, you were saying something?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what immigrants do, right? They grow where they're planted, and if they can't grow their roots here, they're going to find somewhere else, and they're going to give that country the benefit of their skills, right, for generations to come. And also, it's not just when Salman mentioned this particular individual, perhaps it's not just the immigration restrictions that are preventing him from coming back, because the way that we treat people as as a country, right? How welcoming we make them feel also affects whether or not they want to return back, right? So we have so many individuals, and I read the news every day, New York Times. There's so many personal stories from immigrants saying, well, they helped, especially during COVID. You know, these medical professionals, a number of them are immigrants. And so if we're throwing them out with this executive order, are they even going to want to come back if they're allowed? You know, and same thing with these engineers and these other highly skilled professionals. If we're not letting them stay and we're making them uproot their life, they're not going to want to uproot once again just to come back here, right? If they've gotten a good opportunity somewhere else. So we have to definitely think of the human perspective of it, right? Not just
it's kind of interesting because we talk about a company's talent culture, like as a company, right? But also look at the talent culture of the country, right? And it's like, what's our talent strategy? What's our talent culture? And what's our employee engagement strategy as a country, right? This is very interesting. We're getting some comments here, some interesting. Most of these are alcohol related comments, so I won't bore you with the nuances of margaritas. But Tim Quirk did make a very astute observation that I would make an excellent presidential candidate.
Especially the way you're dressed.
I concur. Well, you never see gingham on the trail, but I think it could really play well in Iowa and some of those flyover states. So, you know, something to consider. I do fit the demographic apparently. So, anyway, I do have some more questions though about immigration though. So we talk a little bit about visas and stuff. So what are some of the issues facing H1B backup employees right now? People that are not selected by the lottery. We talked a little bit about this, but I kind of want to go in deeper to this for the mobility managers that are watching this right now.
Yeah, Ben. So the biggest issue is that the United States is not automatically extending anyone's status, right? So if your STEM OPT EAD card is going to expire or is already expired, at that point you have 60 days to stay in the United States on a grace period, right? So that gives us a very small window within which we can offshore someone to another country. And what's happened with COVID-19 is that it's tough to make those visas work because if your destination to offshore them is Canada or the United Kingdom, the biometrics facilities where you would go and give your fingerprints and get your picture taken and all that good stuff, those have all been closed for pretty much the last 3 or 4 months. And now they're starting to reopen, but we're in a time crunch because if you're in that 60-day grace period, we have to make sure that you get your biometrics done, you apply for your visa, your work permit's been taken care of, and you can get over to that new country prior to losing your status here. So that's been something that we've been working with, developing strategies. Maybe we've had to move some people onto different visas in the interim here in the United States, or sent them back to their home country and process their UK or Canada or wherever application from there. So that's really where our role is developing and crafting that strategy to make sure that we can hang on to those employees and keep them working for as long as possible without any kind of gaps in work authorization.
So I want to understand this because I've never been through the immigration process, and I'm kind of an outsider when it comes to this, right? And or a layperson, generously considered layperson. I think so. So what you're telling me is as their status or visa is lapsing, they normally would go through a process to get it extended. However, due to COVID, these facilities are not open.
Yeah, so let me clarify that. Yeah, so if someone's on a student visa in the United States and after they graduate, they can, if they're in a tech role, they can stay for 3 years after they graduate on something called OPT, right?
Okay.
When you get to the end of that OPT, if you didn't get through the H1B lottery at any one of those 3 years, you're basically out of luck. At that point, you need to figure out how to leave the U.S. And there's really very limited options for extending their stay in the U.S. in a work authorized role, right? Maybe you can stay, but you can't necessarily work. So what most companies will do is they'll loop us in to figure out where we can offshore them so that before their time runs out in the US, they can start working abroad. And then there's like a seamless transition, right? And what's happened because of COVID is that those facilities where someone would apply for a Canada visa or a UK visa, those have been closed. And because of that, we're in this time crunch where their U.S. status, that U.S. clock is ticking, but we can't get them that foreign visa in time before that clock runs out. And that's where we've had to get kind of creative.
Okay, so that makes sense. And if they can't get a foreign visa to get offshored somewhere else, then they have to go back to their home country.
Exactly.
Because they have no other options at that point. And you mentioned you have to get creative at that point. So what are some of those creative strategies?
So one of the things that we've done is looked at, transitioning them to maybe an unpaid leave of absence, putting people on visitor visas in the interim. And of course, our firm, we try everything we can to keep them around. We assess them for O visas to see if they're exceptionally qualified. Maybe we can just keep them here. But if that doesn't work, unfortunately, sometimes we do reach a situation where we have to put them into an unpaid leave and they're not going to be able to work while we work that out. And our goal has been to kind of balance the health issues as well, because, it's not, we don't necessarily want to put you on a plane and send you to another country just so you can sit there, because there's so many vectors of contagion. You can get sick on the plane, you can get sick when you get there. So whatever we can do to try to at least keep you here, even if you can't work, is something that we're going to try to do just so that we minimize as much of that travel as we can.
And then to add to that, thanks to COVID, there are other travel restrictions in place, right? So what if they go to their home country, then are they allowed to travel to the destination country once they do get the visa? Because there are so many different travel restrictions in place, country by country. So that's adding another layer of complexity on top of it. So like Salman said, it's, if we can keep them here, the better. That's probably the more efficient route. But again, we're limited, right?
You mentioned an O visa. What is an O visa?
So an O visa is for really extraordinary ability candidates. So if you're in the U.S. and you're running a
podcast host, or what? Do you think, like
Ben, you are like the picture of an O visa candidate.
Just because I'm shaped like an O visa
US
doesn't mean I'm the picture of an O visa. Okay. This guy over here. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't that funny, guys. Come on, let's get back on the program here, all right? No, but seriously, so O visa means you're exceptionally qualified. Give me like an example of what somebody that might fit that is.
Yeah, I mean, the Google.com answer would be, if you've got a Nobel Prize, you'll qualify for an O. But we often get people in with less than that. Typically, if you've got a lot of publications or you have patents, your work is cited in other journals and things like that, then you would probably be a good candidate for an O. But these are really tough applications. I don't know what the approval rate is.
Like
I think
if I got like
30%.
articles on my wall and stuff like that.
Frame them doesn't mean they're important, but I'm just kidding.
How many people call into your show? Those are metrics that you want to hang your hat on.
I'm going to bring all my mobility magazine articles to the office. It's like, hey, so this is one I wrote about moving to Delaware. Here you go. What do you think?
From a mobility, a worldwide ERC?
I got. Oh, you want to see those? Yes, I have these framed over here as well. I mean, I've got lots of framed documents I could bring into the office and hopefully persuade somebody to let me.
Free consultation just for you.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So you have to be a Nobel Prize winner, or you have to have a podcast with a lot of framed documents. So that's really not a very good strategy. That's probably not gonna go.
Yeah, that's usually pretty tough. So typically, if you're still someone the company wants to keep, but there's just no ways to extend you in the United States, then that's where Zara and I come into the picture. And then we start looking for options to send you abroad where the company can make that move.
Now, you mentioned Canada. Canada's an obvious choice because it's close. It's very similar culturally. Are there other maybe less obvious choices that we're competing with for talent?
Well, there are options, but before we go down that route, Ben, I think it's worth pointing out that the options that are available also depends on where the company may have entities. Also, right? So oftentimes we're limited by whether there's an entity in the UK that can sponsor or in Canada that can sponsor, because it does. And even if companies want to establish new entities, that takes quite a bit of time to begin with. So it's not like we can, present the world to you as an option. There are restrictions and limitations that, we have to keep in mind, even to keep talent. So especially with COVID also, even if there is an entity, we're seeing, just like Salman was discussing earlier, we're seeing delays as a result of entry restrictions right now anyway.
So this is interesting to me. So companies might actually form an entity for the express purpose of attracting an individual to employ someone somewhere?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, they can, but typically what's happening in a more real world scenario is a company is just growing, right? So if they have grown in the United States and now they want to tap into other markets, then typically they'll start with Canada and then they'll go to Ireland or the UK and they kind of branch out from there. And what we usually see is at the end of the day, about 10% of your employee population, no matter where you are, is going to be made up of foreign nationals. And especially if you're in the technology space, you're going to be very reliant, especially on Indian or Chinese engineers. I mean, that's just the bottom line. That's where the tech talent is coming from. So at some point, you're going to have to become sponsor eligible. So in the UK, you have to go through a process of getting a sponsorship license before you can file for those applications. So I wouldn't say that companies are creating entities just to offshore people or just to move their employees around for an immigration benefit. I think it's really just a product of organic growth. And then it just gives them more options, especially with their US population.
Well, I feel like if you could start an entity, like let's say in Ireland, to shelter tens of billions of dollars and tax-free revenue, you could probably do it also to put some engineers along with that revenue. But I mean, what do I know?
It's an ancillary benefit, right?
Yeah, I'm just a mover, We've got about 31 people on LinkedIn right now watching, so you guys are quite the draw. I'd love it if you would just go ahead and hit that like button. Please hit that like button. Let everybody know we're live right now. Also, if you're watching right now, I would love to hear your practical immigration questions. I'd love to hear stories. I'd love to hear your actual issues. I've got 2 immigration lawyers right now live giving free legal advice. So it's quite the good opportunity right now. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you next thing here. What are some of the practical issues unrelated to the actual visa work permit that employers need to think about when it comes to the mobility environment right now? We talked about a few of them, but can you give us like kind of a broad swath of those issues that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, sure. So I think the first one, if first of all, is the first issue is getting someone to the destination country, getting them entry to begin with, because entry restrictions are quite still widespread. And then also there's pre-entry clearance requirements put in place now, especially with countries like Singapore. So even though the work permit may be granted, you still have to go through an extra pre-entry clearance application. So that's another level of potential delay in a start date for new hires or transfers, or potential denial outright. So that's one other thing we're seeing. And then
what is, let me stop you really quick and just ask, what is that pre-entrance clearance like? What is that?
It's just an extra form that you fill out and you submit to the immigration authorities, explaining the reason why you're entering, when you're entering, where you're coming from, where you intend to quarantine, whether you understand the quarantine requirements imposed by that country. So that's, and kind of speaking of quarantine, that's another big one that we're really seeing, because as you may already know, there is a quarantine requirement. So if by some miracle of God, you're able to get an employee into the country you need them to be, you have to add that 14-day requirement now. In addition, so adding them that before the start date, before they can start working, adding that if there's a business visitor trip, then adding that extra 2 weeks on to a, maybe a business trip that wasn't even that long to begin with. So that's a practical issue that we're seeing. And then also with quarantine, that comes with extra costs spent. Employers may have to pay for the 14-day, facilities that, whether it's in the government facilities or, private hotels that they have to, or hotels that they have to rent for these employees to serve that 14-day requirement. So that means, let's think about the budgeting when we talk about these business trips or hiring new talent and bringing them into a country?
Ben, I would just say that, again, this is where having a global immigration firm comes into play, because we have to balance out all of these things when we're figuring out a strategy. So I can give you an anecdote here. We have an employee for a large client who is in Australia. He's an Australian national, and the company desperately wants to get him into Singapore. He's a very high-level employee, and that's where their hub is. And so when you're in Australia right now, they have a law that you have to apply for an exit clearance if you're an Australian national, actually, to leave the country. Because they're trying to do a very good job of keeping a lid on COVID. And so you have to apply for that, and then you have to apply for an entry clearance into Singapore. Now, the entry clearance, they only give you a 3-day window, right? So you can apply about a month before, but they're only going to give you a 3-day window within which you must enter. And if you don't enter in those 3 days, you're out of luck. You got to apply again, and you may or may not get the approval because it's been very hit or miss.
What's the point of giving a 3-day window? It seems like such a small window.
Yeah, I think the reason is that they're just trying to limit the number of people that come in just to stop the spread. I mean, they've had a major issue with that over there. So they've done a really good job of keeping COVID numbers down compared to a lot of other countries in the region. I think that's just one of the reasons. So they've kind of created that 3-day window. But if you're in Australia, when they first started this whole program of you need to apply for an exit clearance, you could get one in about 2 weeks. Now it's about closer to a month. So that's where we have to align those things up, make sure that everyone's dialed in and looped in and knows that, a start date to be met is going to have to coincide with when the exit clearance comes through, and it's got to be within that 3-day entry clearance. So, moving someone from Australia to Singapore, they're not that far apart from each other, but there's enormous consequences if you don't plan things through. And that's really where we come into play.
Let's go ahead and see a couple comments here. We got some people checking in here. Hosea checking in from Seattle. What's up, Hosea? I think that's Diana. Is that? No, who is that?
Saudi Arabia. How are they ever?
Sandra Corona from Saudi Arabia. Yeah, what time is it, Sandra?
Right.
What are you doing? Get some sleep. Go to bed. You can see this on YouTube. Marion Van Kempen, if you ever want to move, Ben, come to the Netherlands. The colors on your shirt already match our flag. Yes, I'm quite fly today. Thank you so much for noticing that, Miriam. I appreciate you very much. George Meyer. Hello, Salman and Zara. Great info. George from Corporate Living in NYC. George had a question as well. And George says, any inclination on when the travel ban might be possibly lifted?
Oh, that's the question. That's the question to ask. Samad, do you want to take that one?
Well, I mean, it depends on what country you're asking about. I mean,
just list them all. If you don't mind, just go through 100.
Yeah, in the United States, I mean, our problem is that our numbers are exploding. So it's really who's going to let any of us in anywhere else. Our ban, I think we're probably going to end up making some kind of deal with the EU so that we can kind of relax the restrictions on both ends. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. Until we get our numbers down and more in line with the rest of the world, I don't think that's going to happen for quite some time. The rumors are that Australia is probably not going to let anyone in until next year. Probably not until January 2021. But what we're seeing more and more of is countries creating kind of travel bubbles just kind of between each other once they have a level of trust. So, for example, Australia and New Zealand are working on an air bridge right now between the two of them. Singapore has created one with China. They're working on some others as well. The EU, you can largely move within the EU without any issue, but the sort of larger scale international global travel, there's just, on the one hand, companies are starting to wonder, maybe do we even need to do that since everything's kind of happening electronically pretty well. And then the second part of that is, do they want to take the risk, even if that ends up opening up again? So that's definitely one of the things that we have to keep an eye on from a mobility industry standpoint.
And then there's always exemptions as well, right? So even though there is a travel ban, we can take a look at exemptions, and of course those are not guaranteed. Like Salman said, it's that is a risk, but at least there's hope and there's arguments to be made that you fit into one of the exemptions at least. Yeah.
Let's talk about special cases here. Fernando from Brazil wants to get an O visa. He used to be a great soccer player. Was there a window on soccer greatness as it pertains to O visas, and are athletics even considered?
Yeah, so there are athlete visas. I'm not sure if the O would be the best one for him, but he'd have to send us a video, a highlight reel. We'd have to judge.
Yeah, this might officially be the worst use of your time ever, Salman. I apologize for some of the questions. We have a lot of people having some fun here. Hello from Mexico.
Cesar.
Yeah. See there? Look at that. Look at
Cesar is a good friend of ours. We work with him very often. He's a great partner in Mexico.
That's great. We've got, let's see here, Saudi Arabia. A question from Saudi Arabia. Says, hello, Zara and Salam, but not Salam. But anyway, despite the current situation worldwide, have you seen an increase on visas of highly skilled professionals to leave the United States to work in a different country? Thank you in advance.
Yeah, no, I mean, we have. I mean, there's always those people who don't get selected for the H1B every year, and so they do have to leave. This year, it's even more difficult because of the executive order, right? So, yeah, there's a significant number of highly skilled professionals that are having to leave the country. The other issue that we're seeing is that whenever there is an economic downturn, Ben, and especially a global one like this, all countries are going to look to basically protect their workers and become increasingly scrutinizing of foreign nationals coming into their country to take their jobs that citizens can take, right? So I don't know if this is the case worldwide. I think we are seeing a sharp increase in global unemployment in every country. And so it is yet to play out the full long-term effect of how that's going to affect foreign national talent globally. But I think US is one of the ones that's taken the most aggressive action. So yeah, we have seen a significant increase in that.
Personal question. I'm trying to go to Singapore to do Love and Relo in Singapore in November. What are the odds? Numerical value, please. Percentage. I'm
going to put that at about a 0 right now, Ben, unless we get you in an employment pass and an entry clearance. I'm not sure it's going to work out.
Yeah,
so I get a job also out of this deal. All right.
Who's your sponsor?
Yeah, I can't say. It's proprietary. Let's see here. Nora has a similar question. I'm planning a trip to Peru next month. Do you have info on South American countries?
Yeah, so Peru has actually extended their travel ban to pretty much everybody through July 31st. So we'll kind of have to see then after that. Do they extend that? Hopefully you'll be able to make your trip in August, but at this point we cannot guarantee that.
Okay. All right. Rory checking in from Many Moves. What's up, Rory? Elena has a fun question. I'll be the judge of that, Elena. Fun question for Zara and Salman. For workers who think they're exceptional but really don't qualify for an O1 or EB1A status, what's the best line you've used to let them down easy? Feel free to use Ben as an example. Get out of here, Elena.
Best line I've used on someone who really
let me down, Salman. Let me down. I got a lot of framed documents on my wall. I got a lot of articles in niche publications. I think I'm pretty fancy. Why can't I get an O1?
I'll say, Ben, you're almost there. Just let's keep working on your resume a little bit and let's talk again next year.
Isn't that false hope somehow?
No, you got to give them a little bit of hope. You got to, because then you never know. They might keep striving and get better, get published, get patented, and that might be enough.
That's true.
I'm 1 year out. I'll come see you next. I'll come see you next. Yeah, you want to make sure that if they do win the Nobel Prize, that they come see you, right?
Right.
I mean, Let's see, Viva from the Netherlands. We see the Netherlands and Europe going actively after high-skilled tech employees who are denied to enter the USA now. Do you foresee a big shift in where people go?
Yeah, I think it goes back to where they're welcomed, right? And they're welcomed in countries like the UK, for example, and Netherlands being one. But I know certain countries like the UK, I'm working with a number of my clients because UK has a shortage occupation list, which contains a number of these engineering IT job roles. And if you fall on that shortage occupation list, your employer doesn't even have to test the labor market before they hire you. And that really cuts down on the time of the visa application and just the uncertainty surrounding the whole process. So yes, we are going to see, these countries like someone already talked about Canada taking measures, but UK also has that in Ireland as well. And so there are these major hubs around the world that are welcoming engineering and IT talent around the globe. So
yeah, and you'd be surprised, Ben. Our clients, they'll find a place that is very attractive and to immigration just to get some of these folks in. Like we have a client that, all of our clients for the most part take advantage of the highly skilled migrant program in the Netherlands. It's a great program. You can fast track visas. Within 2 weeks you can get somebody in as long as they're making above a certain salary threshold. We've got clients that are going to Estonia because it's very easy to get people in there. So companies, especially multinational, especially in the tech space, they're looking at where is there a friendly immigration environment. Unfortunately, the United States, I can't say is one of them, even though we're still the largest immigration destination for around the world. If we're not careful, we're going to see that go away because other companies are specifically enacting these programs, like in the Netherlands, the Orange Carpet program, and like Zara mentioned, these shortage occupation lists to specifically fast track visa application types and permanent residence paths to get and retain this talent. At this point, we're lagging behind here in the U.S. on programs such as that.
When you say skilled workers, how do most countries classify skilled workers? You said skilled workers, and you said making over a certain amount of money. Is one or the other? Is it both? Is it how do they determine?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the country. So some countries require a degree, right? Like you have to have a degree in a certain field that's relevant to what you're doing. Other companies have a number of years of experience. It might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, but they also look at the role. Is the role on a shortage list? Like, is it technical? Is it data science? Is it software engineering? Other countries, they look at skills assessments. So if you get a skills assessment and you get a certain number of points, it's a points-based scheme. So, it's very similar to specialized knowledge that we use for the L visa here in the United States, but they're a little bit more fleshed out. They want to see exactly, what kind of skills you have. And if those are in shortage in that country, then they'll put you on one of those fast-track programs.
What if you host a podcast?
Man, I will find you a country where that's on the shortage list. Give me a few days.
I'm not going to Estonia, Salman. I'm not going to Estonia, man.
You might like it. I hear it's nice.
I hear good things as well. Rory says, do you have a real ID, Ben? Yes, Rory, I have a real ID, and I still have my fake ID from college, so I should be good to go wherever we end up. Simon Johns from January 1, 2021, free movement will end and the UK will introduce a points-based immigration system. Under a points-based immigration system, points are assigned for specific skills, qualifications, salaries, and shortage occupations. That's a big sentence for a man drinking gin and tonics right now. Visas are then awarded to those who gain enough points. How will this affect U.S. citizens coming into the UK or indeed other nationalities?
It's not going to affect the U.S. citizens that much because we weren't a part of the free movement system that EU nationals could take advantage of. I know the largest impact will be felt by EU nationals because they were allowed to go reside in UK without any formalities, but without, I guess, registration, but really didn't have to obtain a work permit or a visa of any sort to be able to relocate to the UK.
Yeah, I think it's actually going to get easier for people from the U.S. or from Australia or other countries that were looking to move to the U.K. because now the points threshold should come down because they can exclude people from the EU, which they previously could not do. So we're actually quite hopeful that things will open up a little bit more in the UK now.
So I wanted to ask right now, because we're seeing a change in unemployment right now, right? So unemployment in the United States was in the high teens. It's kind of down now to the low teens, but it's still extremely high. And I see this across the globe as we're all kind of going through this together. What do you think the short-term and the long-term impacts are going to be of rising unemployment?
Yeah, so I think we've discussed a few already, is that increased scrutiny of certain sponsorship of certain roles, like the soft skill roles, like marketing and business development, possibly sales roles, right? Because the labor market for that local country might already have a pool that fits that skill set that they're looking for. Whereas maybe for IT type roles, there is a shortage in the labor market, the local labor market for the skill set. So maybe we could expect increased scrutiny for soft skill type roles. Also, we can expect increased scrutiny of the labor market testing process. So, immigration authorities want to know, did you test the labor market and really try to locate a local national, or did you just do it as a formality? So they're going to really look at the process that you went through to find someone to fit that role before sponsoring a foreign national for that role. So that's something we can talk about. We can look forward to, at least in terms of short term.
Yeah, and Ben, in the long term, I think to some degree, remote work is here to stay, right? So companies have to look at how that's going to impact their employees and their business model. So I read a survey the other day that PwC did that found that still 71% of millennial age workers want to work abroad. They want to do at least a short assignment somewhere. So I don't think that working abroad is going to come to an end, but I do think that where they go might be different. So maybe they're not going to want to necessarily go to the country where their company has an office, right? But they still want to work somewhere else. So are companies going to support them? And if it's a really elite talent, I think they will. So that comes, again, we come into play there. Where can we get you work authorization where your client either has an entity or does not have an entity? If you're now, thinking about having more employees work remotely, do you really need all these entities and offices all over the world? So we're seeing some clients start to contract their entities, eliminate some. What does that do to your sponsored foreign national population? Can we still keep them living there on a work permit? Are there workarounds? So, I don't think immigration is going to come to an end. I just think the way that people and employees go about it and where they go, that's going to become a little bit different. And that's where the challenge comes in for us.
I was talking to some people yesterday, some folks at some relocation management companies here in the U.S., and we were just kind of talking about what things are going to look like. We were talking about work from home, what some of the second order effects of work from home might be. And I could definitely see people getting two things. I could see people getting so used to working from home that they don't ever want to go back in the office. And in fact, if their employer says after 8 months of working from home that you have to come back in, a lot of them, people have even told me, bankers, technical people have told me, I'm going to go find another job. Right. And so, because it means that much to me to have the flexibility and the balance to work from home. And then take that a step further. Now, if I'm working from home, if everybody's working from home, then I could live anywhere. And if I want to live in Thailand, or if I want to live in the Caribbean, or if I want to live on a farm in the middle of Wyoming, I could do that, and so, so what is how might that, is that going to have an impact on immigration, or is immigration going to impact that trend potentially?
That's a good point, Ben, right? How are countries going to change their immigration policies to evolve and grow with that demand. So that's yet to be seen, absolutely. But I think that immigration, hopefully immigration will grow with the times. And but for now, you still have to, I mean, in theory, if you want to work from Thailand, you can only, as a US citizen, you can only stay there as a visitor for a certain amount of time. So it depends on how long and what are you allowed to carry out in terms of activities as a visitor. You also have to be cognizant of that. So yes, in theory, you can work from anywhere, but you really have to be careful how you have to have some sort of immigration status, right?
So you're bursting my Thailand dream is what you're doing. I saw myself sitting with a laptop on one of those funky canoes, just floating around,
From the beach. Oh, from funky canoes in the middle of the
I'm a canoe guy. Beaches, I don't do sand, but like I was going to be in a canoe, surrounded by water with an amazing Wi-Fi thing or something. I don't know. I haven't figured it all out yet, but that was kind of my idea. And so you're saying, okay, Ben, the canoe, cool. The papaya salad, cool. You can do that. The hat, but you can't necessarily work, is what you're saying. Just because, is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, it depends, right? What does work entail? Are you doing productive work? Is it just meetings? Maybe meetings are okay.
Hosting a podcast.
I don't know. I'd say you may be able to get away with that. Salman, what would you think?
I think. Well, Ben will qualify for exemptions wherever he goes. He's going to get carte blanche from the governments, and but seriously, I think these are all really actually viable questions going forward. And just a shameless plug. One of the points that Zara and I made in our Bloomberg Law article recently is that companies need to start working with their government affairs people in shaping immigration policy, because immigration policy needs to keep up with the times, as Zara mentioned. Your employee population, if they're going to be working remotely forever, they may not necessarily want to live where they're living right now. So how are countries and companies going to help facilitate that? Because I think a lot of countries are going to want those dollars to come in. If you're a highly compensated employee and now you're living in another country, why wouldn't they want you to spend that money there? So, I think it's kind of an exciting opportunity for a lot of countries and companies to kind of guide us into the next decade.
I think you're 100% right. My salary is a lot of baht. Okay. I go to Thailand, I got a lot of baht. All right. And I think they would want that. I mean, ultimately, Rory says, well, if you're in Thailand and your company hours are 9 to 5 Eastern, are you going to be up at 2 a.m. to work and sleep all day? The idea of working in Thailand is to be able to see the sights in the daylight. And Rory, you've obviously never been to Thailand. You are absolutely incorrect with your premise. The idea is not to see the sights in the daylight, it's to see the sights at nighttime. Rory, go rent The Hangover. Anyway, Viva, or is the new norm continental, quote, bubbles, and people stay in regions and don't move intercontinental anymore? Are we going to be in a series of bubbles and concentric circles?
I mean, that's all. I'd be interested to see how it plays out, right? I think these are all great questions, right? And we all know we're at the cusp of something new globally, right? And so, Viva, that's a great question. Love to hear your thoughts on it.
Oh, she punted.
Salman,
what do you think? Are we going to be in a series of bubbles, or is this going to kind of like fade?
I really don't. I mean, I think the nature of work will change. I think, you'll see more remote work. You might see less business travel because companies are saying, well, why should I pay for somebody just to go and meet for a couple hours for a few days? But I think the wanderlust that people have, especially our generation and younger, is not gonna end. It's just a matter of how is that going to look from a legal lens and from a relocation tax entity formation perspective. How are companies going to react? Because I don't think people are going to stop all of a sudden wanting to live elsewhere and experience new things. So I think our industry is going to survive.
Awesome. Mark Moose, love you too. Really do. Viva, how do you foresee the Hong Kong situation developing with potential 3 million people getting welcomed in the UK? What?
Yeah. So this is a big deal. I mean, the UK is talking about giving, extending rights to Hong Kong nationals. Australia just announced a program last night where they're going to allow some folks to stay. We don't know what that's exactly going to look like, but a non-extradition treaty and special status if they're in Australia now. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on for sure.
Mhm.
So fascinating, and I know nothing about this, but I'm going to say something anyway. So the UK owned Hong Kong for like 99 years or something, right? And then they lose it or give it back, or however you want to term it, to China. And now the people in Hong Kong are like, well, we don't want to be part of China. We don't want to be a part of this. And so now the UK is like, hey, all the people in Hong Kong come over here, and so we kind of get the benefit of the talent, even though we don't lease the country anymore. And it's just kind of interesting to think about it almost like kind of in terms of companies and acquisitions and talent mobility and talent management, and like looking at countries as similar to companies in the way they do business. Fascinating stuff. We got a couple more comments here. Tim Quirk, I live in 35 minutes from Canada and am a remote worker. Is there a way I could live in Canada and keep my current job?
You'd have to find an immigration status to in Canada, right? So I don't know if you're a U.S. citizen. I presume that is the case, but
He is a U.S. citizen. Yes.
Yeah, so you'd have to have some sort of a immigration status to be able to live in Canada. Maybe get sponsored by the company that you are currently working for in Canada. That would be a good option.
Well, one of the cool things about Canada is that they allow people to work remotely from within Canada for a foreign entity, and it doesn't violate their immigration laws. So unlike the United States, you can do that there. So Tim should be looking into express entry. Zara, what do you think? He's probably got the points to get in and get permanent residence, and then he could absolutely work remotely.
And it would give him a lot more points for express entry because he already has a job in Canada. So that's already a pro working for you. So yeah, Tim, look into that.
Tim, you should contact Zara. Tell her Ben sent you. I get a kickback. Just kidding. I don't. Rob says, how do we know Ben isn't in Thailand right now, just using clever Zoom backgrounds on video calls? That is actually true. There is a Zoom background of my mediocre office in Detroit that I use when I'm in Thailand. Fantastic, very observant. Roy Ramirez, will the passport be something of the past and a plastic global ID card be made?
I don't know. Borders still quite exist, and I don't think
highly doubt it. Country, that's the thing. Countries still create these barriers to entry, and I don't think that's going to go away. It's just that's where we come into it. We have to navigate that.
Nice. Rory's clarifying that he has been all over the world. Go Army. Gary Connerly, sorry I missed this. Work got in the way. Never let work get in the way on a Friday, Gary. Follow your dreams. Rob, limitations to leisure travel might encourage people to want to relocate even more to satisfy that wanderlust.
True.
Yeah, maybe. You guys wrote a really great article in I saw in Bloomberg Law on their site, and part of the topic and the premise was that COVID might change immigration for short-term and long-term. I wanted to. I know we're kind of running over here, but I mean it's a big it's a big issue, right? It's a big place, the world. Are there any aspects that you wanted to make sure we touched on, and that you think people should know about how COVID might impact immigration?
Ones we haven't covered already, huh? I think we should. What I want to make sure that, especially for the global mobility managers, but also everyone else in the industry, is to just understand that immigration is not business as usual right now. So expect delays, plan for delays. Understand that even if countries are opening, consulars are opening, biometric centers, they're reopening slowly. They are dealing with backlogs. They are dealing with skeleton staff. They are dealing with unemployment for them as well. So they're going to be slower than normal to respond. So I would say just prepare internally, way ahead of time if you want to transfer or hire new talent or plan business trips, and do so before committing to contracts with clients that require overseas travel. Is consult your immigration attorney, make sure it can happen before you commit to make a business commitment. So that's my final word on that.
Yeah. And Salman, do you want to leave us with a final word as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that there's some strategies that companies need to start thinking about going forward. I would say it all starts with tracking and data. You've got to know where your foreign national population is. You got to know what roles you're sponsoring. Like Zara and I have been saying, we believe that soft skill roles are going to become more difficult to get folks in for. So you want to know how many people you've got sponsored in those roles. Do you want to change that and focus more on the technical stuff? And just really understanding, where there might be gaps and where we can kind of fortify your immigration program.
Awesome. Wonderful. This has been a great show. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. We had over 30-something people at any given time on LinkedIn tuning in here. Folks are still coming in here with little comments here. Let's just see here. Let's see, Alexandria. Thanks for hosting, Ben. Zara and Salman are the best mentors a young attorney can have in global mobility.
Alex is the best law clerk you can have in global mobility.
Nice. Look at this. You know what? And that's a great way to leave it too, because compliments are free. Be nice to each other. Have a wonderful weekend. I do want to remind everybody, as my future co-host Janaina says, get ready for LATAM week. Next week, we are dedicating the entire week to the region of Latin America. I have a phenomenal co-host in Janaina. She is going to co-host a wonderful series of programs where we are spotlighting some of the best and brightest professionals in the Latin American region. We got global mobility practitioners on the corporate side. We've got relocation service providers. We've got tax. We've got housing. We've got movers. I mean, we've really got it covered. So I encourage everybody to tune in for a special edition we are calling Amor and Relo. I even got a new logo made, so just it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting. So look forward to everybody tuning in. Thank you so much, Zara. Thank you so much, Salman. You have a wonderful weekend. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody.